Hello everyone, I finally found the Derpy and Doctor story, so I'm gonna read it because I Derpy, my logo's Derpy and all that. So the story is called Derpy Meets the Doctor. Chapter 1, The Mailmare of Ponyville by Heavy Holler 75622. Let's get right into it. Derpy reached up out of the bed and tapped the button on the alarm clock, shutting off the loud and irritating squeak she was making. Sitting up, she scratched her back and followed it up with a yawn in the stretch of her back and legs. So somewhat bleary-eyed, she followed that up with a stretch of her wings, left one first as she groggily rubbed sleep from her eyes and tried to dispel what she jokingly referred to as morning dragon breath. Derpy idly wondered, and not for the first time either, if Spike ever woke to morning pony breath. She was up earlier than usual today. Normally, her schedule allowed her time to get Dinky off to Miss Cheryl's class before she had to report to the Ponyville post office. But a care package somehow got wrapped in the latest escapade of the main six, and pulled a muscle trying to get out of range of the latest villain attack. Derpy smiled at that. After all this time, and even being a good friend of the equestrian heroiness, she still wondered why any pony panicked when something inimical showed up, bent on reducing the main six to adhesive glue. Twy on their herd always pulled it out by the end, and running away in a panic usually was far more dangerous to a pony than staying calm and trotting on. Once Derpy totally ignored a complete chaos overhaul of Ponyville, and even managed to get almost all of her bag delivered, though trying to catch a herd of wild mailboxes running free on the checkerboard landscape did take a lot of her time that day. But once she learned they were all suckers for raspberry and blackberry muffins, why she finished in no time at all. Whether any pony actually read them and that day was really not her job, though it did nag at her once in a while. She was just supposed to deliver them, and having all the mailboxes in one herd had made that simple. Derpy wasn't supposed to help residents catch their own box, though she did manage to find Octavia later and yell at her this week at how. But Tavi was having her own difficulties after her otherwise trim, attractive body and taking on the proportions of her cello, with the instruments bowing in intense pursuit as she tried to flee. It had damaged its bowstring, and during a performance of a baroque cello suite in G major, and had been pulling at her mane and tail intensely for a replacement. After the little incident, every pony pretty much forgot all about her little thing with the tiny storm cloud and the lightning. She grabbed her house robe and stuffed her hooves into her slippers and went into Dinky's room. Her little angel was fast asleep, no doubt dreaming of incomprehensible things like video games. Derpy didn't play them, the graphics frequently in her eyes terribly, and not being the most coordinated and reflexive pony around with tiny buttons usually led to the mocking game over screen in no time at all. Dinky was a fair player though, and she loved going to rarities to hammer on controllers with Sweeterbell and Button Mash. Button's mom would take over whenever Derpy was busy on express delivery or rarity was on a deadline for culture orders. She herself would have the gang over whenever Button's mom wanted time alone with her husband on weekends. Though they had slowed down considerably after Buttons was born, prior to that, and despite Button's older brother Gibson, you would have thought the two of them were running machines. They were after each other so much. Derpy felt a little pain of loneliness, a reminder that there was a hole in her life, though the horrible, rot-toothed, abusive pony she was married to was long gone, somewhere over in the Rainbow Falls, said the song. The one thing he managed to give her that was worth the pain of it all was asleep in the bed in front of her. Dinky, time to get up, she said, pulling the covers off. School, dear. A painful groan as the little horn on the unicorn freely lit up and the covers resettled over her. 5 minutes, Mom, she said sleepily. Derpy pulled them back off gently. Nah, little lady, school. I have to go in early today. Lyra and Bonbon should be here in a bit to see you off. And no playing with the food coloring to pretend you're sick with the joke pox or anything else. Bonbon is wise to that stunt. Remember, you may be able to fool Lyra, but not Bonbon. Dinky still ended up at the school that day. After Bonbon had managed to wash most of it off, Lyra tended to sweet, funny, hyperactive, and easily panicked, and was totally taken in by the little blue dots. Dinky had to dial it back when Lyra, hyperventilating slightly loudly, contemplated an anxiety-filled moment to considering calling both Mom and the doctor. Bonnie worked with colorets all the time in candy making, putting 2 and 2 together once she got a good look at the unusual rash. And once Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon started in at school, the idea of simulating grave illness with mom's baking supplies was pretty much out the window. Dinky threw herself to an upright sitting position, scratching herself just like her mom did. Derpy smiled at the familial trait. "Get ready, sweetie, and I'll start breakfast," she told the gently swaying form. Derpy tossed the muffins into the microwave with a damp paper towel to keep them soft while she nuked them warm. As she waited, she poured a cup of coffee from the automatic brewer so it could cool a little bit, then headed off to get ready herself. A short session with a face cloth, a brush, a quick scrub with her toothbrush to get the overnight grime out of her mouth, and she was ready for breakfast, which announced itself with a loud, cheery ding. Dinky, in the meantime, in a resigned clattering of small hooves, had hit the bathroom and the microwave before her, and was well into one of a pair of genuine mother-created blueberry muffins, heavier on the sweet, and a glass of apple juice. Derpy slurped the coffee now that her mouth felt sufficiently decrusted and sighed contentedly as she managed the little molecules of caffeine working their magic. The microwave once more announced its finished. This time with a pair of muffins Dinky had started. Derpy took the plate out and seated herself with it, then picked up one of the lemon surprise muffins she got from the cake shop yesterday afternoon and a bit into it. It was amazing how good they were. The cakes, despite having twins and employing that hyper-caffeinated, glucose-soaked dynamo Pinkie Pie, or maybe because of she certainly had her way of doing things, turned out superior muffin, even better than hers. She was quite the baker herself and won the Ponyville baking fair on several occasions. Amateur category, but she indulged her guilty pleasures every once in a while. This was one of those times. Dinky finished her first one and reached for the second as her horn glowed and a pencil danced across a piece of paper. "Dinky, are you doing homework?" Derpy asked sternly. "Homework was done after school the day before, in violate rule." "No, Mom, Princess Luna's gonna watch us this weekend, remember? I'm writing her a letter about what games we want to play while all of us are at Canterlot. Spike said he'd send it if we brought it by the library on the way to school." Derpy stuffed out a momentary feeling of panic. Buried behind another bite of muffin, that nightmare moon, the thing was well over, and Princess Celestia would be around, as well as the royal guard and such. Still, the Princess of Night was terribly intimidating to her. "Philly's gotta run," she thought unhappily. Her little girl was growing up, and having a demigoddess as a friend was just the way it was. Besides, it was certainly better in Canterlot itself than in Ponyville even, which was coming due for the next disaster of the week fairly soon. Also, it wasn't Flutter's home either. Discord wasn't any better than Luna for comforting her anxiety. It was definitely worse, and Derpy always cringed while opening the door to Flut's mailbox. He had a tendency to leave little surprises. She absolutely despised that obnoxious, arrogant, spoiled rotten rabbit of Flut's more, though, and lately Angel had taken to outdoing Discord. In the middle of her musings, the doorbell rang. She opened it to a familiar aquamarine mare and her cream-colored roommate and love. "Hey, you two, good morning. Come on in." Hugs and kisses all around. Amazing how the two of them always smelled like chocolates, vanilla beans, and all sorts of gooey sweets that waited inside the shop Bonnie had, while the two of them squenched themselves into the tiny studio apartment above. Bonbon held her length for a second. "Derpy, you look fantastic. How do you keep the weight off?" "I look at anything other than a rice cake. I gained 10 pounds. Derpy positively beamed. "That must be hard inside a candy shop. It's all the flying and walking, Bonnie. Throw a heavy mailbag on top of that and it just melts off." "Yeah, this maniac has the same thing going on with her. Lai eats just about anything and gets skinnier. You two are so mean," she laughed. "Where's the kid at, hun?" she asked, looking over Derpy's shoulder. Derpy looked back off to the bathroom to brush her teeth. "Right?" she called out. "Yes, Mom," came bellowing back, laughing. "Aw, school flu issues aside," Dinky ordered her aunt. Loved watching Bonnie make the best candy in all of Equestria. Even these few minutes before she went to school and they went back to City Drops. Candy store were the best if you wheedled it just right, which wasn't hard at all. They would walk with her on the way to school, and she might score some of the turnover stock for her and her friends. She even shared that with Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, though the lion's share went to her, the Cutie Mark Crusaders, Button Mash, and the rest of the class. Hey Derps, I got a question. Why does the post office deliver mailbox to mailbox? Wouldn't it be easier just having the unicorn zap it there? Lara asked enthusiastically. Behind her, Bonnie face-hoofed. Leave it to Lyra Heartstrings to come up with something like that. That it will leave Derpy unemployed didn't phase her a bit. They tried it, Lyra. Unicorns that teleport are a few and far between. Did you ever learn how? Derpy asked smoothly. Nah, it's a hard one, though. It would have been nice when we were at school. Those teaching assistants don't like you being late. I don't do much more than levitate and sometimes add extra plunks or strums while playing. Kinda like having 3 hands. Hooves, I mean. Bonbon stared mild daggers at her lover. Yeah, see, unicorns have to walk the route, or if they can, teleport themselves box to box, then open and close, zed by hoof or watch, while magically manipulating the door and mail or teleport the stuff directly into the box if they're really good at it. While getting the pickup, Twi has a kind of control, and so does Silly and Looney. Every pony else, Sweetie, not so much. It's very tiring than all that magical handling. The unicorns doing it would expect to be paid for it, right? Derpy pointed out. Oh, Derpy gave the striped head a kindly pat. Something Lyra still looked forward to. Derpy had been a stabilizing force in Lyra's life at Canterlot University. Studies, disapproving parents, a disastrous love affair, and rapidly depleting funds almost tipped the scales against Equestria's greatest harpist from ever becoming more than a street corner busker. Derpy had managed to keep the emotionally damaged and fragile young mare together, even as things went wrong with her own future. Derpy called her own parents one awful day after Lyra's mother and father had flailed her raw with their anger and disappointment at her choices, and had her dad pull some strings of his own. After the pony and the chamber music quartet heard the emotional, charged song Lyra had plucked from the depths of her despair, he sponsored her the rest of that year, and then twisted several legs on the board of the Canterlot Symphony to write her a scholarship. The Torchies at Trottingham Orchestra were insanely jealous of that particular coup after they heard the aquamarine mare play. Bonbon lowered her voice, interrupting Derpy's flicker of memories. Don't they mind you giving them nicknames like that? She asked nervously, her eyes darting around a bit as she looked for the Drachik alicorns to invoke right there in Derpy's living room. Twilight prefers it. Actually, she isn't all that happy about being fawned over as a princess since the change happened. Princess Celestia likes that I don't try to curtsy every time she walks by. I think she gets tired of it from time to time. Luna will know. I don't exactly know. Though Dinky and her friends use it, I think it's okay. Though, because the kids use it all the time without any pony ending up on an orbiting celestial body. Speaking of, I better start hoofing it and finish getting ready. Mail doesn't deliver itself, Derpy said, chuckling. She ran back to her bathroom, brushed her teeth vigorously, then ran the comb through her mane, which did its usual rejection of conformity. Next, she used the facilities as the caffeine exerted its influence on her kidneys. Then she looked in the mirror. Her eyes were pointed correctly for a second, then the right slid off on its own. She sighed deeply, concentrated, blinked. They stared back at her currently, then the left wandered. She sighed deeply once more, her cheeks puffed out. Her friends, her family didn't notice anymore, but she was about to go back out into the world, away from home and safety, and not only did ponies notice, some pointed and whispered. They weren't being cruel, not intentionally, but she always felt the stares. The world changed constantly. Things moved around, didn't stay exactly where they had been before. It made it harder to estimate where objects really were. It made her clumsy. And all that made her shy, nervous, self-conscious, and emotionally upset. She had to do it. Dinky needed her to take care of them both, but maybe in other circumstances, she would rather be alone, away from the stars and whispering, by herself in her house where no pony else saw. Derpy came out, kissed Dinky on the cheek. Sweetheart, I'm leaving for work. Lots of love forever and ever. Don't give Bonnie and Lai a hard time. Dinky gave her a ferocious hug back. She saw that Mummy had those tears in her eyes she got from mirrors. If Bonnie and Lai gave her the stock rotation today. She'd make sure mommy got most of it. Derpy hogged Bun and Light next. Thanks you two for hauling all the way out here. Dinky wasn't the only one that saw the watery eyes. Bonnie and Lyra could have suffocated her. They hugged back so hard their eyes weren't so dry when they let go either. Oh, get out of here, Derps, you gorgeous thing, you, Lyra chided, diverting the Mailmare's attention as Bonnie hugged her again. Bonnie had to take a second to dash a little overflow off her face in the middle of the hug, where Derpy couldn't watch. Nice thing about long-term relationships, you learned when to cover for each other. It broke their hearts that Derpy was so alone with no pony to shore her up like they had found with each other. Still, they tried. Derpy smiled through the tiny waves in her eyes. Gonna walk her to school like usual. Bonnie took over for a second to cover for Lyra, who took her turn hugging the blonde and gray mare. She wiped her own eyes as she held Derpy. It's right on the way, Derpy. Of course we're all going together. Bonbon said happily. She already had a couple trays picked out to send with Dinky when they got to the store. Lyra grinned shyly when she finally let go, but she missed a bit of the rivulets on her own face. Derpy wiped the tiny streaks away on Lyra's face herself. Oh, stop it, you two. I'm fine. You're worse than my sisters. You know that? All they ever talk about is getting me into a relationship. I already have one, and she's piddling around instead of cleaning up the kitchen like she's supposed to. That's enough. I gotta go, she said cheerfully, stepping through the door and out into the world. Bye, she said as she took off. The couple added their own joyful farewells, went back in and closed the door. Lyra managed to keep fairly calm, though she really wanted to break down completely and seek refuge in cream-colored forelegs. Oh, Bonnie. Yeah, me too, Green Bean. Can you save it for later, dearest? She asked as she gave the aquamarine muzzle a quick peck. Let's get Dink to school first, and then we can talk while I pull out today's protection run and open up. Rose Luck can handle customers for a bit. She's so nice, Bonnie. She's always been so nice. Why does all this happen to her? It's not right. Shh. Little ears hear things. It tears me to pieces too, but after we get Dinks to school, maybe the next time Princess Celestia comes in for lollipops, you can ask her. She smiled, but the tears in her eyes welled up again. In the meantime, stout heart, like she has, for Dinky's sake. Yeah. Derpy took wing almost immediately for the post office. She wasn't late, far from it. She would arrive in plenty of time for her early start. She needed to shake the blues off, and that meant flying. Derpy loved flying. She was actually pretty accomplished as an aviator. But with the likes of Rainbow Dash and Ponyville, you could be a Wonderbolt and just pull. Also ran in the standings. Not that she was a huge competitor like RD was. She loved to fly for flying's sake, not because she had to prove constantly she was the best at it. She actually had a Wonderbolt flight herself in her closet from when she was at the academy, but her eyes wouldn't let her go farther in the particular career. If it had all gone according to plans, Spitfire would have been her second, and she would have had the office unacclaimed. University would have just been the icing, not the cake. She tried to bake after she grounded herself. Dinky pretty much closed the doors forever, but between all of those, she wanted Dinky more. She touched down outside on the loading dock, just as On Time walked out the service entrance. Yo, Derpy, yo, real early. Shop rules say you can't even clock in for 30 more minutes yet. Grab some coffee and donuts in the break room. Sure, Chief, she said happily. On Time was the shop foreman. And though he was the union steward, he wasn't a hard case. He said what the bargaining agreement dictated, but he wouldn't bust your flank about it if it asserted a rule here and there in your favor in regard to doing your job well. Management liked him because he was fair. The shop liked him for the same reason. The only ponies upset with him were the upper level union bosses. But On Time had a reputation he earned as a EUP soldier in those occasional rough patches that happened before the main six came along and straightened things out for fair. And he ended up retired from the military due to combat injuries. Play nice or else, that was his slogan. There was one Union Hall slime that had crawled out from under his rock in Canterlot to read On Time the riot act for playing fast and loose with the collective bargaining rules. He got Time's usual treatment of POGs. He ignored him. The slime then went to regional Philadelphia, who sent their usual goons out to lean on Time and his family to get with the program. One spent 8 weeks getting his spine glued and screwed back together again. That was just hospitalization. Rehabilitation was worse and much longer. The other wasn't really injured too badly, but he decided he needed a permanent change of scenery and moved way out west to Las Vegas. The minute he could get back and sign his retirement forms, the black-eye time had healed fairly fast, and the cracked rear leg only needed a fixation device for a few weeks. On time hadn't even put in for medical leave, though the external alignment device looked horrifying. He still worked his shifts without complaint. That's the kind of troop On Time was. Derpy hadn't participated in the violence herself, but she did know where the evidential skeletons were buried. After all, she herself was the one that flew the hickory axe handle the goons had originally brought out to discuss the situation with Time deep into the ghastly gorge, but passed the quarry yields on her own. No pony, no matter what the motivation, would go looking for it without a probable amount of help, even if they knew exactly where she had let go of it. No pony threatens a family around Ponyville lightly. You had better be prepared to pay up front all the way. And in Ponyville, almost every pony treated every pony else as family. Derpy first went to the locker room and pulled her gear out. The official Christian mail service hat, her smart blue mail jacket with those epaulets to help keep mail bags in place, her whistle for mail delivery and occasionally for dogs, though she never used it for that. 2 wing beats, and all dogs could do was watch in confusion as she hovered above them. And her old beat-up favorite mail bag. She put on the jacket and hat, put the whistle lanyard around her neck, and settled the mail bag over her head and across one shoulder. The bag was on her left. Then she mindered to the break room, greeting ponies with "Hi" and "How you're doing" as she went. The cheerful replies came back to her back because every pony was busy and had no time for small talk. She inspected the offerings on the table, the usual donuts of all types, most of which had been enthusiastically enrolled by her co-workers, and 2 apple cinnamon crumble muffins, lovingly separated from the rest of the pack, placed on a real plate from the cupboard with a stickum note on it for Derpy tagged to the plate. She positively beamed. Outside the break room window, 3 of her co-workers smiled. She was their favorite route carrier. Though Ponyville didn't need hardly any, being so small, she never fussed impatiently when they were swamped, even digging in and lending a hoof. Though On Time was always said something about it in passing. She pre-sorted her incoming before dropping them in the appropriate sort boxes, rather than just dumping it on the sort table, and always had a chipper attitude, with one of the most manual of tasks working the mail. On Time saw the gaggle, rolled up on it, but just smiled at the ponies watching the Mailmare. They smiled back and then left for their various jobs with ridiculous grins on their faces. Time watched through the window as Derpy, concentrating hard, zeroed in on a coffee mug. He quickly decided to intervene. "Hey Derps, I got that," he said as he picked up the cup. "What do you want today? Chocolate espresso, French vanilla, hazelnut?" "Had chocolate 3 times this week already. Vanilla today. Time it'll go perfectly with the apples and cinnamon," she said, all sunshine and smiles. "Grab a seat and I'll fix you up." He repacked the donuts into a single box, tossed the empty ones, and swept the muffins onto the table by hoof while he levitated the cup into position under the French vanilla spout, deftly pouring a cup with telekinesis alone, not even watching the cup. Once he got the cup filled just right, he lifted it to the table along with the sugar, adding 3 teaspoonfuls of sugar on the fly with his aura. As he spotted the muffin plate perfectly in front of the place she had chosen with his hooves, he then stirred the coffee magically with a spoon as it softly alighted next to the plate. It was actually a talented, brilliant demonstration of his skill with magic, handling multiple objects, moving through space exactly where he wanted them, even while his eyes were elsewhere. Twilight Sparkle once watched him do the same thing with multiple mail stacks, 2 heavy packages, and a tray of letters. Derpy had accidentally dropped when the alicorn had snuck in behind her and startled her with a cheerful "Hi, Derpy." He caught all the letters on the fly in the box, all while controlling the other items in midair, and not one had been missorted or out of order. Twilight wanted him to tutor in advanced abilities after that, but Time turned her down, saying he already had all the magic he needed in his world, and she could give him that spot to some pony better deserving. She acquiesced calmly and with a smile, and though she was sure he misunderstood that he was going to be the only student in training, Derpy sipped the coffee and nibbled one of the muffins slightly to be polite. She wanted to save them for lunch, but she didn't want to appear ungrateful regarding the gift. Her personal tank was almost full already. On Time gently lifted the bag from her, moved it out of the break room and toward pickup. Time, I can get that, she said, puzzled. Forget it, Derps. You still won't get on the clock for a bit, and Flip already pulled your bundles and pre-sorted it for the delivery. Turns out we were late last night and decided to prep yours, plus the Canterlot bundle for a special delivery to take. No ponies trying to get much out and delivered home-wise this Friday. And the bill payments come into the office today, so don't think you're skating, he said, taking the seat across from her. Oh no, Chief, I wouldn't think that at all. I just thought, Flip and you split care packages shift. Flip gets the back load for staying over, you get front load for coming in early and relieving him. Nice and equitable. He glanced at his Fitlock watch. Go clock in and pick up your bag at the dock. I just finished. I'll bag these and you can take them with you for lunch, along with a small thermos with your coffee. He stood up. So did she? Right, Chief. She left to clock in. Time had everything done by the time she came back. The thermos had a bell for the top to prevent accidental opening, and the muffins were in a plastic bag inside the sealable cloth carry sack that also held the thermos. He settled it on her right side and used his magic to button the left epaulette, holding it in place. The mailbag was floating gently as they left the service entrance onto the dock, and he gently set it in its place on her left, buttoning the right epaulette, holding it as well. Got good balance? He asked matter-of-factly. She flapped her wings a couple of times to experiment with her lift. The bag was a good deal heavier than her lunch, but she just shifted it closer back along her spine. It felt fine. Okay, get started and be safe, Philly, as she swept into the air. She waved a bye as she started toward her first stop, Ponyville proper. The moon was minutes away from Luna pulling it down and Celestia raising the sun as she left. On Time sad in relief. Bonnie had called him from Derpy's, told him she was upset today. He decided to do what he could to help her feel better. Besides, it cut down on any accidents she could possibly have from being stressed out, which usually spiked at her clumsiness. It wasn't all gallantry on the team's part. Well, maybe a little. She was still their favorite Mailmare. He turned around to see most of the crew watching him, grinning from ear to ear. What are your old mules looking at? Get back to work, he grumbled loudly before breaking into laughter. The gang followed suit, laughing and clapping him on the shoulder as they went back inside. Derpy swiftly swept into Ponyville, then back-winged and settled into landing with a soft flapping of wings near the huge tree, which was the library. Just as the moon and sun exchanged places and a new day started, Ponyville was the bulk of her delivery, started with the Golden Oak Library. Twilight Sparkle's home. The mailbox door squeaked gently as she put the 2 letters she had in the box. The flag was down, so no pickup. Twi rarely had outgoing since most of her stuff went straight to Princess Celestia by Dragonfire. She hardly sent notices for overdue books, as most of the time she either got them back properly or just bumped into the individual and asked him in person. And so it went. The cake shop at Sugar Cube Corner, Rarity's Carousel Boutique, Carrot Top's Produce and Green Grocer, Sweetie Drop's Candy Store, the Twist Malt Shop, all the businesses making up the center of Ponyville. The bowling alley had no delivery, but their box flag had been absconded by high schoolers during some silly year-end graduate scavenger hunt. She always checked away, picked up the 2 letters that were waiting. She was having more than the usual pickups, and it was true most were bill payments, commerce at work. Town Hall had the usual outbound flood. Seemed like the typical thing. Government was a paper-generating mill, and somebody had to gather it up and cart it away so it could go somewhere else. But it was a fairly even trade with all the mail she dropped off, though it felt like she unloaded slightly more than offloaded. Same thing occurred at the school as well. She watched Shirley overseeing the class at morning arrival duty as she circled around to land. She even saw Dinky, who she waved at cheerfully and who enthusiastically in return. There was Button Mash, his head down, watching some game he was playing, and the CMCs in their capes, who were assembling some odd-looking ramped contraption. Just before Shirley came up and said something, the dejected. Ah, from the three girls carrying clearly in the cool morning air. Derpy laughed loudly at that. Cunimite Crusaders were becoming something of a legend in the community as to the commitment, depth, and inventiveness of their quest for the Cunimites. Parental notices today in the outgoing that report cards were due to go home with students next week. She steeled herself for those. The school added more pages every year to them. Derpy remembered giving her mom one page neatly folded in half that had her grades on it, back when Coates and Phillies brought them home. Dinky's last one ran to 3 pages, mostly all notes of one kind or another, and the same 1/2 sheet with the actual grades on it. The school board wanted their say now, too. Probably an entire new page, 25% more weight for self-congratulations. Pfft, she thought to herself. The outskirts suburban homes were similar and pretty even in exchange. Drop off to pick up. While she had been working, Ponyville had been slowly rousing itself, and ponies beginning their day with a happy greeting to her as she either walked or flew her part in the day. This was the best thing about her job. She got to see almost every pony and also got the latest news and gossip straight from the horse's mouth, as it were. Filthy Rich got his usual pile of bills. She picked up a similar bundle of payments going out. The wealthy had one thing that certainly was different: the voluminous amount of mail they sent and received. She then swung by the apples orchard and watched discreetly from altitude as AJ and Big Mac bucked apple trees. Granny Smith was hanging out wash on a line outside. She was an interesting one, appearing frail but together than the nails holding together the recently rebuilt barn. Applejack had her own rep, and an impressive one that left Big Mac. He was a good-looking stud, strong as a mountain, not much of a talker, and sweet on the schoolteacher Charity, which was reciprocated, though neither of them told the other. The previous embarrassment by the Cunimite Crusaders 2 years back put the two of them on the down low. For anything obvious, though, one would always watch the other intently when they were in proximity to each other these days. Bets were on as to when they figured it out. She had tossed a bit in for 2 dates, but being late for her to get in. Both numbers were stretches. One was tomorrow, the other months away. It was too bad. The pool was getting big, of course. If nothing happened by the last day, every pony was considering just rolling the pool into a new. Derpy sighed as she landed and serviced the mailbox. Only a few envelopes payments came out as a pretty good stack, mostly bills, went in. That would shift once harvest came in, though she sometimes worried about the apples and that nice guy that belonged to some pony else. Once that set was delivered, came for the harder part of her route. Farther flung homes, the farms, ranches, and the folks that enjoyed the solitude. Hers was one of them, not overtly remote, but not a close in where a short walk or a few discreet flaps brought you to the next place on the road. She was always so grateful to Bonnie and Lai, Tabby, or even Vinyl when they came out to keep an eye on Dinky. All of them had made a mark in the little unicorn's life. Vinyl was the one that taught Dinky levitation magic, having Dinky left the records to her that she had brought along to show the filly how she worked her turntable as she Derpy's record player. Octavia and Lyra frequently came by in the off-season when they weren't touring with the symphony and gave her a love of music as they practiced. One time, Vinyl showed up with her small, relatively DJ outfit and the 2 classical artists in tow. And Dinky watched in amazement and rapt attention as the 3 most famous musicians in this part of Equestria melded into an awe-inspiring flood of gorgeous music at Dinky's recent 8th birthday. And it was only for Dinky and her guest. Diamond Dialva and Silver Spoon could book DJ Pon 3 or the symphony or the chamber music quartet for a stratospheric cost, but not the top cellist, harpist, and DJ together. Vinyl made sure of that, personally telling Filthy Rich right to his face. Distastefully and inventive off-color language, she'd rather spin disco under a mirror ball than play a classical gig, at least for him. Rhino had carefully avoided using the word pops. That was for Dinky, and Dinky alone. Bonbon showed Dinky how to cook like a top cordon bleu medalist chef. Dinky could frequently make fascinating food and rarely put a hoof wrong in the kitchen when supervised. If something did get made that would render a starved pony wanting a chance death instead of eating, Auntie Lili could always be counted on to manage to get it down. College had prepared her well. Refocusing her attention, Derpy fairly quickly managed most of the route. Flying was a real benefit on this section. A walker on this route would have to really churn to get it finished. Then a pretty little place came into sight. Hers. Well, mostly hers, only a few payments left. After she dropped her mail in the mailbox, she looked farther down the road toward a wild growth of trees and an incongruously lovely cottage near the stream. Her heart sank. Fluttershy's. She flitted up the road slowly. Discord may be awake or may not, depending on his whim at the moment, or the moments after or above. But as sure as her daughter's love, that rabbit was lying in wait for this approaching minute. She and Angel, she thought, had a warm war going on. Not a cold one of brinkmanship, and definitely not anything hot that required spear launchers or other weaponry, but those things that occasionally led to minor injuries usually sustained by her. Most every pony did not appreciate Angel Bunny, who would heartlessly manipulate Fluttershy to extreme ends to get his way. Her problem was, after a few hard ciders at the apple farm, Derpy told Flutz right to her face how bad a hellion the little beast could be, and he had overheard it being small enough at times to escape notice, especially when she was a bit drunk. Fluttershy apologized profusely about his behavior, but she never promised to get the tiny Chimera under control, and as they were leaving, the minuscule white demon stared right at her over Flutz's shoulder as she carried him away, making the "I'm watching you" thing with his paws and eyes right into hers. The other town's ponies patted Derpy on the back, hugged her for being so brave. They even cheered her a bit personally, all except for Applejack, who, with her characteristic honesty, inquired quietly if Derpy had her insurance paid up, and remarked gently that a special rider for death by a rabbit would be a really good idea. That cup was 20 yards from the house. She was safe outside that zone within it. She had been scratched, bit, jumped on, scared almost to death, hit by a rather rotten jack-o'-lantern left over from Nightmare Night. A week before, pelted by hard-packed slush balls, had a rather deep staining by a very dark sun-tea jar upon on her, numerous fireworks, and the Critin still had plenty of tricks in his bag. Discord would usually just surprise her by sticking his head out of the mailbox when she opened it, or jump out of her mailbag, swap the house for the mailbox, make the letters more slippery than greased eels, more chaotic than outright horrible things like the mailbox herd, but in the end, she still didn't care for those either. She steeled herself, climbed until she was hovering just above the house outside the red zone, and above the mailbox she then slowly lowered herself down to the proper level. Bats, the pickle flag was up. She resignedly took a long plastic hook from her bag, tentatively started to use it to open the box while she hovered to one side, when she heard a voice. "Derpy!" from the house. She looked up to see one mismatched dragon necklace. "Ah, raisins," she thought as he puffed in and right next to her. Well, 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 what a pleasant surprise. How good it is to see you in this fine morning," Discord chortled happily. "You wouldn't mind if we had a little tiny conversation for a bit?" Derpy sighed and put the hook away from the moment. "I suppose so. What's on your mind, Discord?" she asked as she managed to control her terror. The guy was older than the planet and almost as old as the universe. Had actually challenged the princess directly for control of the world she was living on. I wanted to talk to her. "Oh, plenty. Such is the enormity of the cosmos, my dear Mailmare. But first, which eye do I talk to?" he said curiously, head very close, trying to decide which one was better to converse at. She almost giggled. Most every pony wouldn't dare even consider saying such a thing, though a few of the more obtuse jumped right in with something thick-headed. Every pony usually settled forward, gazing at a spot on the bridge of her nose, directly between them. And here was the sovereign, reigning demigod of chaos, asking a forthright and very honest question honestly. Pick a spot between Discord, most every pony else does, she said cheerfully. Oh. Or look at whichever one is closest. I have to remember that. I have almost the exact same problem. He shook himself free from his musings. What I wanted to ask you, how much would it cost for you to ship a particular noisome package for me to say Zimbabwe? He asked frankly and honestly. Derpy hesitated just a fraction of a second before quoting the price for international. Something wasn't quite right. Okay, mister, you can simply snap your fingers and appear any place in the universe at a mere whim. Why do you need the Christian mail service for anything, much less package delivery? She stared at him hard. Well, there goes the supposition of a few have that you're not all that bright or clever. Some ponies around here aren't very good at judging character, my dear Mailmare. I would very much like to get rid of something very annoying, and I really can't afford to have my prince involved in it, he said as his mismatched forelegs grew those hand things Lyra went on about constantly, the fingers wiggling around on the end, and it was a bit nauseating. Discord, she said, forthwith on the bridge of her nose, exasperating, using the same tone she used when Dinky was being obstinate. Alright, I want to get rid of the rabbit, okay? You don't like Angel either? She asked, perplexed. The rabbit messed with him. Either he was one brave bunny with some kind of incredible hole card, Fluttershy qualified, or he had a suicidal death wish. Fluttershy got me with that friend thing her and her friends have going on. I'm learning that isn't all that bad, not really, but that little white tattletale freaks me out every time. I try to have a little fun. Discord grumbled loudly. He started pacing. Nothing bizarre, nothing grotesque. Just tiny amounts of good old-fashioned chaos here and there to keep my hand in. You see, as one of the fingered things disappeared while the other remained, yet every time the hideous monster runs and blabs all over Fluttershy, who then spends the next few hours lecturing me on and on and on. As he poofed himself on psychoanalyst's couch, hanging upside down in midair, he struck a dramatic pose made even more ludicrous by the usurpation of the laws of gravity. I will simply lose my mind and crack under the pressure, my dear, and start picking flowers, prattling on endlessly about love and tolerance. Derpy couldn't help but chuckle. Well, we certainly can't have that now, can we? Discord suddenly picked his head down from where it had been draped over the edge of the couch. What was that? He asked, with a different tone in his voice. What? My question? She asked back. No. You laughed. No pony laughs at my little jokes. There's always the screaming and the running, followed by Sunbutt and Moonbutt, showing up to turn me into a decorative lawn display. The poof removed the upside-down hanging in midair couch and showed Discord in his stone form that sat in the royal garden for centuries, before the next poof brought him back to life. Or it's those insufferable elements of harmony doing it. And Fluttershy somehow managed to get this friendship straitjacket onto me until I can't even breathe. Derpy giggled again. Sunbutt and Moonbutt. Discord was in front of her in a flash, looking into her eyes. Are you giggling? Sure, why ever not? It's funny, those two so serious around every pony, afraid they'll break wind, and then every pony will be exposed to the royal. Discord's eyes bulged. Don't you mean affluence? As he picked her up and stared deeply into her eyes. She smiled brightly and shook her head. The muscles in his jaw worked back and forth for a second or two, and then he laughed. He laughed hard enough to drop her, though she was flapping her wings within milliseconds, so she just hovered there. And he didn't just laugh, he laughed as if he had forgotten how, and just now remembered how, as some pony told a particular insensitive, outrageous, funny, off-color, gut-busting joke, which she had. He laughed until the tears floated like lemon lime soda, and he handed her an umbrella to keep dry under. He laughed until he burst like a balloon, and she managed to stay neat under her umbrella as the sticky parts rained down. He laughed as the parts reassembled back into him, on his back, then on his stomach. As he pounded the ground with a fist, and as the guffawing slowed down, he tenderly hugged the little gray Mailmare and set her down gently on the ground. Derpy, you are an absolute treasure. I could just eat you up. Hey now, no roaring around here, she said, which triggered another round of laughter and chaotic physical changes in him as she giggled. Once more, the laughter slowed as he tried to catch his breath. He rolled over on his back, watching her. Oh, that's wonderful, he wheezed gratefully. Where did you get such a marvelous, twisted sense of humor? Try looking through these eyes sometime, pal. You'll see all kinds of things with them. Learning to laugh comes along with it. Or it's rough sometimes, she said as she settled down next to him. Her head leaning against the paws as she stretched out on her back, letting the stress bleed away. But sometimes things just work out. Aren't you frightened by me? I'm not exactly snuggly woogly like ponies are. Discord, you're a demigod, the lord of chaos. Of course you're scary, and it's intimidating, but inside somewhere, you're all by yourself. You do this neat thing, you turn to say, hey, did you see this? Wasn't it cool? And no pony answers you back. Soon as you're stretching further and further, getting stranger and stranger, one day you just let go completely and decide on making beings terrified instead of entertained. It's not exactly fair for you. Every pony needs a bit of chaos in their lives. Otherwise, you'll be bored out of your skull as a being. Life is what happens in between after you make your plans and keeps you sharp. It polishes your edge, she sighed warmly. Where do they come up with ponies like you? First Fluttershy who takes away my power, then you who gives it back? He looked up. I've never been confused before, and now I'm totally flummoxed. Friendship is magic, pal. Chaos theory in operation. It's all in all its glory. No pony knows why. No pony can explain it how. It just is, she said calmly. Interesting way to explain it. He took a deep breath. Debbie, can we be friends? She smiled up at the odd face. I thought we already were. Oh, and just to let you know, I love these wild mailboxes you did a while back. That one was a bit hard. There were mailboxes. What do you do with a mailbox? I sort of ran out of steam by then and couldn't think of anything really witty, so I just threw that out there. Well, just to let you know, I appreciate it. Once I figured out they liked the muffins, I got them together enough to get their letters delivered. Clever pony, you actually managed that? I did. How about your little problem? This guard deflated a bit with that. Are you absolutely sure I can't send him to Zimbabwe? Not if you want to keep Fluttershy happy. An angry Fluttershy is exceptionally difficult to deal with, and if you get between her and an animal, especially Angel, it will not be pretty at all. Trust me, I know. I don't care for the little terrier, and I think it would do a world of good for Angel to learn to appreciate what he has. A 6-day rat in a tiny box into Zimbabwe without food, water, or a toilet just might be the impetus he needs to look for a change in his life, but we can't do that. Zisker sighed as he lunged on the ground, then he sat up as he remembered something. And what, pray tell, were you doing with that little hooky thingy? He asked curiously. I was just about to see whether that psycho bunny trapped the mailbox. Of course he did. That's why I snapped in next to you, rather than get my head blown up sticking it out of the box when you opened it. Really? That sneaky little lippus? I wish his head would get blown up, she said angrily. Then they turned their heads and looked at each other in unison, grinning. Oh, stop fussing, you little monster. If you're completely innocent, nothing will happen, right? This girl leered as he raised a squirming, angry little white rabbit, even with the door of the mailbox. Oh, stop. Okay, Derpy smiled charmingly. You know I believe him, Discord's sweet little bunny oney angelkins wouldn't do anything so underhanded like booby trapping a mailbox of physically challenged pony like me. Get her on. Would he? Fluffy, woofy, snuffy guy. She grinned as she finished with a squee. Angel was staring unadulterated murder at the two of them. He drew back, bit down hard on Discord's massive paw. Oh, stop, please. It tickles. He sniggered those near rubber teeth of yours. It's like I'm being gummed to death. You really should get together with Pinky Buys Alligator and compare squishy marks after his. If there's an after, of course, just for the entertainment of it, I could give Gummy real teeth for a bit. Just to see what happens. He said, a bit of the bad old discord peeking out from under the executioner's mask. He poofed into place. You're not going to be hurt by this, are you, Discord? Derpy said in a mock horror. The mask disappeared with a poof. Not a bit, my dear. I thoroughly and liberally applied some of my anti-explosive detonation cream to myself and my appendages before I even picked him up, panting on it. It works so well. Oh well, then go ahead and fire away, grittily. I'll just stand over here away from the sticky, flying, rabbity bits. If you don't mind too much, she said calmly. You can have the umbrella back if you want, he said, as it poofed into existence by Derpy once again. He hadn't bothered to clean it up after its last gore-filled use. Why, thank you, good sir, for your kind consideration. She snapped it open, a bit of oozy, dripping discord slammed down the front of it and then plopped on the ground. Angel stared at it apprehensively. My pancreas! I wonder where it had gotten off to. Derpy mind fetching that while I finish her. Why, certainly, my good fellow. I'll just toss it up on this rock here. Discord, you don't mind the dirt and grass on it, do you? She asked as she wiped her disgusting hoof off on the ground. We can wash it up inside. There's going to be a bit of a mess to clean up afterward anyway. What's one more? He said as he turned his attention back to Angel for the last time. Any last words, Rabbit? He said, sounding remarkably like a short, angry little man with a cowboy hat, 6 guns, and a fire-red, long, droopy mustache. He reached for the mailbox door. Angel broke down. Derpy didn't understand Rabbit, but the flood sounded very contrite and apologetic to her. Discord listened attentively, and he asked when the flood cut off. The burst of sound resumed, though the character changed slightly. Now about Fluttershy. A pause. Discord started reaching for the door again. There was a frightening squeak, and even more noise tumbled out. Exactly, you need to treat her very nice. She sticks up for you when every pony else would like to see you right here like you are now. Stop being a bully. No pony likes a bully, and even though you think you're tough and smooth, there's always a bigger bully out there that might take exception. Got it? A squeak of accent. He looked relieved. One more thing, Angel. Discord smiled. He yanked the door open. There was a tremendous bang that made Derpy jump as she watched, fearing the worst. The cloud of smoke dissipated. Neither Discord or Angel was hurt, though. Angel had fainted dead away. The ground was littered with glitter and streamers that Discord had substituted for explosive force. The mailbox was slightly distended, like it had eaten too many letters that suddenly explosively secured with it. Discord never one to fail to tell the entire joke. Was sooty and grimy from his waist to the top of his horns. Only the clean space of his yellow eyes was untouched. Derpy smiled grandly, then snickered at the ridiculous figure Discord cut. In moments she was rolling around on the ground laughing. The sooty body, the pointing nose his eyes made when he blinked, and the unconscious floppy rabbit in his hands. He set the bunny down gently and then snapped his fingers. The poof cleaned him up head to toe, repaired the mailbox, and policed up all the litter and glitter sprayed around. It also removed the icky yellow umbrella and any gore on her or her uniform and equipment, leaving the pristine. Discord was holding the wayward pancreas in his claw. He tossed it up, caught it in midair with his mouth, whereupon he swallowed it. He took a few seconds punching his body here and there to get it into the right place, and then proceeded to turn a remarkable shade of green as he spit gravel, dirt, and grass pieces out of his mouth like an automatic weapon device. Derpy was near hysterical with laughter. His proper color now restored, Discord gently picked up the bunny and held him calmly and quietly. Had to show him you'd do it, didn't you? She asked as she wiped the tears from her eyes, her body still twitching from the occasional spasm as he recalled things. But of course, dear friend, otherwise he'd be back to his old habits before Monday. Threats aren't useful without proper action to back them up. Otherwise it's just noise. And you? She opened the box, took the single letter inside. As she closed it, she said, "I wonder what day of the week I can set aside to have lunch with a good friend." "Me? I'm touched, my dear Derpy. I have a pretty open schedule nowadays. Is there one particular day you approve of?" Discord chuckled. Most every pony else would start backing up, ears flat against their head upon hearing that. She just smiled and rubbed his leg. "I'm wrapped up with work during the week, and Saturdays are for Dinky. I want to try Sundays for a while. You don't have to come for all of them if you're tired up." Discord flashed for a second, bowed head to foot. He tipped over and thumped against the ground. Derpy giggled as he smiled. This coming Sunday, his poof flashed again, and he was lounging once more on the ground, his right foreleg propping on his head as he looked at her. "Why ever not? You like anything to eat in particular? I make a pretty good muffin," she said. "Chocolate," he sat up. "You handle the food, I'll bring the drinks. That's the correct form for this, right?" He was trying hard to get it straight. "Yeah, that's how it usually goes. Is one in the afternoon okay for you?" Discord? Derpy asked happily. "Excellent. I have a lunch date." He smiled brightly. Then he looked down. Angel woke up, holding his head. He looked around quicker than the elbow of Discord's left arm. He said heavily, "I suppose we'll have to go back inside now. Almost finished with your work today." "Almost. I do like to get the return in order before dropping it off. I have a time at the end of my shift coming up to just that. Then I fly home in time to greet Dinky as she comes home on the school coach. Not too bad a thing." "Well, have a good time, friend. I'll see you on Sunday for lunch," he said as he peered at the bunny in his arms. As he walked back into the house, he chided the rabbit. "Now that's the way you make a friend, Angel." Shared common interest, she heard just as he closed the door behind them. She stared at the door. "I have a new friend. I have a demigod of chaos as friend." She shivered slightly as she stared. "How do I explain this? Hey, Bonbon, Lyra, like you to meet my new friend Discord? This is Lyra and this is Bonbon. Hey, I've got no idea. Let's get Tavi and Vinyl. I'll get Dinky and we'll all go bowling." "What did I just do?" she asked herself aloud, perplexed. The end. That was an interesting comic. Goddamn, that was beautiful. I was like laughing in the middle of this.
100,000 stories have filled my head as I look for the end.